In the frost-covered north of medieval Europe, there lived a princess whose name you may not know, but whose story will echo through time. She was born into nobility, promised to a king before she was old enough to understand the weight of the word marriage. When she grew older, she dared to defy him. She said no to a king, and in return, she lost her home, her title, and her place in her father's court. This is not a fairy tale. This is not fiction. This is the true story of Ingegerd, the Princess of Sweden, who defied power and paid the price. Welcome, wanderer of history. I'm your guide through forgotten tales and real medieval truths. If stories of silent courage and royal defiance stir your soul, do subscribe now. Before we begin, let me ask you this. If a powerful king asked for your hand and you didn't want him, would you still say no? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your answer. Now, let's travel back to the land of deep pine forests, frozen lakes, and royal bloodlines, the Princess of the North. Her name was Ingegerd Ingvarsdotter. She was born around the year 1096 in the ancient kingdom of Sweden. Her father, King Inge the Elder, ruled with traditional values. He was respected for his fairness and strong Christian faith. Her mother, Queen Helena, was noble, devout, and deeply involved in church affairs. Ingegerd was raised inside the royal court, likely at Almarestaket Castle, not far from today's Stockholm. Imagine her early years: grand halls of cold stone, furs on the walls, tapestries lit by candlelight. Winter, snows pressed against the windows, while nobles debated politics by the hearth. Ingegerd would have been educated, unusual for many women at the time. But as the daughter of a king, she likely learned to read Latin and studied scripture, law, and dynastic history. She also learned something more dangerous: to think for herself. A marriage not of her choosing. By the time she was just 8 years old, her fate was sealed. She was betrothed, formally promised, to King Magnus Barefoot of Norway. He was older, more experienced, and infamous. Magnus III, known as Barefoot because of his love for dressing like a Viking, was a fierce warrior. He had already waged brutal campaigns in Ireland and the Scottish Isles. He ruled Norway with iron fists and long ships. This was no love match. It was a political alliance carefully arranged to keep peace between Norway and Sweden. It would unite two powerful royal houses and prevent war. But Ingegerd was no ordinary princess. When the time came for the marriage to proceed, she refused. A scandal in the north. This was unheard of. A princess, just a child, defying the will of her father, the king, and refusing a powerful neighboring monarch. What could possibly drive her to say no? Some records suggest she feared Magnus. Others whisper she loved another, perhaps a nobleman or a young monk. Some believe she sensed danger in Magnus's violent reputation. But whatever the reason, Ingegerd stood her ground. And in that moment, everything changed. The royal court was stunned. Her father, King Inge, was enraged. Sweden could not afford to insult Norway. To reject Magnus could mean war, bloodshed, humiliation. And so Ingegerd was exiled. The price of saying no. She was stripped of her titles. Her status as princess, daughter of the king, was gone. Alone, she was escorted out of the Swedish court, likely with only a few, servant, perhaps a priest or guardian. Her journey began through Jämtland along the borderlands of Sweden and Norway. These were wild, cold lands. Forests stretched endlessly. Wolves howled at night. Snow draped over the mountain passes. She may have stayed in distant monasteries or found shelter in noble homes sympathetic to her cause. But she was far from the comforts of court life. The chronicles of the time do not record her complaints. They speak only of her silence and her strength. A cold silence. Life in exile was hard. Gone were the feasts, the fire-warmed halls, the sound of lutes and bells. Now, only silence and snow. Each morning she woke in foreign lands, knowing she had defied everything expected of her. But something remarkable happened. Ingegerd did not fade. She did not marry out of fear. She waited, and fate moved. Destiny. In the East years passed. Then, in a turn no one expected, another offer came, this time not from the west, but from the east, from the mighty court of Kievan Rus, a land of princes, cathedrals, and cold rivers. Yaroslav the Wise, Grand Prince of Novgorod and Kiev, sought to marry her. This was no small court. Kievan Rus's was a rising power, a crossroads of trade and culture between Europe and Byzantium. Ingegerd accepted, and, in doing so, she transformed her destiny from exiled daughter to future queen. But that, the Eastern proposal. It was the early 1010s. A message arrived from the East, from the court of Yaroslav the Wise, the Grand Prince of Kiev and Novgorod. He wanted Ingegerd's hand in marriage. Now pause for a moment and think. Yaroslav was no ordinary prince. He ruled a sprawling land that stretched from the icy forests of Novgorod to the golden domes of Kiev. His court spoke Old East Slavic, traded with Byzantium, and followed Orthodox Christianity. This proposal was not just another marriage, it was redemption, it was power, and this time Ingegerd said yes. Crossing into a new world, the journey was long and cold. She left Sweden once again, this time not in exile, but in honor. With her entourage, she traveled southeast across the Baltic Sea, down rivers lined with thick forests and frost-bitten shores. As she entered the lands of Rus, she became more than just a foreign bride. She became a symbol, a royal from the West, a Christian woman, a noble figure of alliance between two powerful dynasties. Upon her arrival, she was greeted with ceremony and reverence, and soon she married Yaroslav. With that, her new identity was born, Saint Anna of Novgorod, from princess to grand princess. In her new role, Ingegerd, now Anna, became Grand Princess of Kiev. She wasn't just a wife to Yaroslav. She was his advisor, his partner in diplomacy, his equal in many ways. Together, they ruled over a land larger than any kingdom in Western Europe, a realm that included what is now Ukraine, Belarus, Western Russia, and parts of the Baltics. She helped him build alliances with European powers. Their daughters married kings of Hungary, France, Norway, and Poland. Their sons became rulers and warriors of renown. Ingegerd's own bloodline would one day stretch to the thrones of France and even modern-day royalty, patron of peace and faith. But Ingegerd wasn't just a queen in name. She became known for her piety, wisdom, and deep commitment to the Orthodox Church. She helped found churches and monasteries. She negotiated peace treaties between rival principalities. And she supported the construction of the St. Sophia Cathedral in Kiev, one of the greatest achievements of Rus's architecture. Inside its sacred walls, frescoes glowed in candlelight, and prayers echoed upward into the domes. Ingegerd walked these halls, not as an exile, but as a queen. She also brought with her something Sweden had given her, an understanding of Western Christianity. She helped bridge cultural and religious worlds, and slowly her name became more than royal. It became sacred. The legacy of Saint Anna in time. The people of Russes began calling her Saint Anna even during her life. She was seen as holy, devout, wise, a protector of the poor, the sick, and the vulnerable. She had come from rejection and ruin, and built an empire of influence. By the time she passed away, around 1050, she had left behind not just children, but dynasties. Her daughter Elizabeth married Harald Hardrada, King of Norway, who famously died at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. Another daughter became Queen of France. Her sons became princes of Novgorod, Smolensk, and beyond. Her story, once shadowed in scandal, was now inscribed in cathedrals, a quiet strength remembered. Even today, Ingegerd of Sweden, known as Saint Anna of Novgorod, is remembered as one of the most influential women of the early medieval world. She is a canonized saint in the Eastern Orthodox Church. Her relics lie in the St. Sophia Cathedral in Novgorod, where she had once walked as a ruler and a servant of faith. She never sought revenge. She never returned to Sweden to reclaim what she lost. Instead, she built something greater, a life chosen, a kingdom shaped, a peace earned, So, what do you take from her story? She was born royal, rejected by her own, but she refused to break, and in a foreign land with foreign language, customs and faith, she became more than a survivor. She became a symbol of what it means to choose your path, even when the world chooses against you. Tell me in the comments, which part of Ingegerd's journey moved you most? The exile, the marriage, the rise to power? Let's talk below. And if you haven't yet, subscribe, because the next story is already taking shape. Thank you for listening. Until next time, may you carry Ingegerd's strength and walk boldly, even when the road is unknown.